Rosalind. I'm the host moderator for Waking Giants. You can't see me through IG Live because I'm hosting via Zoom. So just to let you guys know, you're here with Antonio Arellano from Jolt. It's an amazing, amazing voting initiative, voting registration initiative we have. And then we have our co-founder, Martha Pincoffs from Waking Giants. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you're in our Zoom meeting, please use the chat window. It's a great way to communicate with myself, the host, to ask questions or to ask Martha or Antonio questions. Just a heads up, they're going to be chit-chatting, so they may miss what you ask them directly. So please field those questions over my way. Obviously on IG Live, I have no way of seeing those right now. So please ask some questions via IG Live also. Hit up our website, wakinggiants.me, for awesome events, speakers like Antonio. We have more really, really amazing conversations, and every Tuesday here at noon, we're going to have these awesome, noon Central Standard Time, we're going to have these awesome conversations around civics. So without further ado, boss, you can take it away.
Thank you very much, boss.
Oh, there's the echo.
There's the echo. All right, I'm turning it down. Antonio, thank you for being willing to join for the very first of the noon countdown to the election. We're 90 days out. I know personally the critical work that you are doing over at Jolt, and I just personally admire you as one of the best and brightest leaders in Texas right now, and I'm thrilled to share space with you and hear
Martha,
your
it's
take
a pleasure.
on the election.
And hear your take on the election.
Absolutely, sorry. It's a pleasure to be connecting with you too. I know there's a little bit of a slight delay, but I'm so happy to be joining you in this conversation. I'm so proud of the work that you're leading over at Waking Giants, and I know that it's going to take a true village, an army of people across the state to be able to bring transformative change to Texas. So I'm happy to be in this good fight along with you.
Yes, you are. You are an excellent fighter. I think we could have like tiers of fighter. You can just get the excellent 5-star. So Antonio, I would love for you to introduce yourself and to introduce Jolt.
Absolutely, thanks. Yeah, so my name is Antonio Arellano. I am the Interim Executive Director of Jolt. Jolt is the largest Latino civic engagement organization in the state of Texas. We're operating out of Austin, Dallas, and Houston, and have a presence on almost 30 college campuses across the state. And we're committed to making sure that we move forward democracy in Texas and give an opportunity to everyone to participate. But we're specifically focused on the demographic shift that our state is currently undergoing and empowering young Latinos to recognize their full power and potential to drive forward change.
I love it. And I think that it is an undertold story, certainly, right now about the demographic shift. So I would love for you to like drop some facts on us. Like, let's hear about how profound that shift really is and where we are right now and what Texas looks like 10 years from now in terms of demography.
It's incredible. And so like we really are at a unique place in history. And I think we seldomly realize history when it's happening. It's not until years later that we look back and realize like, wow, that was monumental. What is occurring today in this state is absolutely of historic and monumental proportions. The census just changed the recent estimate. And normally it was indicated that Latinos will become the largest ethnic population in Texas by 2024. That estimate has now shifted to 2021. So by next year, if we get the count out, if people get counted accurately on the census, we'll be a Latino majority state. And with that comes a lot of political power. Some incredible statistics are, for example, when we talk about Texas politics, the most recent statewide race that was really, really significant for us was the Beto Senate race against Texas. Beto O'Rourke lost to Senator Cruz by 200,000 votes. And you find that number in the percentage of Latinos that turn 18 every year and that will turn 18 every year for the next decade. 200,000 Latinos in Texas alone will turn 18 and will be eligible to vote. With that comes a lot of political power. This moment of a demographic shift that our state is undergoing is emblematic of how our demographics have been growing and have been exponentially coming into power. Latinos are a driving force behind the Texas economy, and they should also be a driving force behind Texas politics. And once we get young Latinos out to vote, we won't just transform the Lone Star State, we will transform America.
Yes, Antonio, that is what I'm talking about.
Really, Antonio? Okay, get it.
So thrilled by is that Texas has been in this stuck place for so long politically. You know, the theatrics have been hijacked by the right, and it has been profoundly bad for our humanity, I think. And so what I am so excited about is the energy and the momentum that Jolt and other organizations are bringing to engaging the young Latinx vote, and the youth vote in general, I think, will show us back to ourselves. But I would love to hear. So there's several things I want to talk to you about, just because I think that you're so uniquely qualified to talk about all of this. But I want to talk about the census, the count of which is going on right now. I want to talk about voter reg for sure, and I want to talk about an election where I believe that our actual democracy is at stake, like it has never been in any other time in our lives. And so let's start with census, because I feel like there's some stuff going on related to the census right now, and I think that would be a helpful place.
So at Jolt, we recognize that the census is a once-in-a-decade opportunity to really win back the resources and the representation that our community so desperately needs. And that's why, since early on this year, we've been invested, and our Jolt initiative mission was to mobilize the largest percentage of Latino census takers in modern Texas history. We've done this through a multi-pronged approach by culturally developing campaigns that speak to the needs of our communities and are representative of their voices, as well as making sure that we're engaging in a multilingual approach to mobilizing these folks to get counted. Interesting note that I do want to make: just this morning, the LA Times reported that the Census Bureau is actually cutting short its deadline to get counted. So originally the deadline was October 30th. You could get counted on the census until October 30th. Now the new deadline is September 30th. So they're cutting it down by 1 month. And at Jolt, we see this as a strategic attempt to try to diffuse and limit the amount of people getting counted. By cutting it back 1 month, we run the risk of losing out on hundreds of thousands of people getting counted. So if you're watching this today and you haven't already committed to filling out your census, please go to my2020census.gov and fill it out. It takes 5 to 10 minutes, and it's a couple of clicks to win back a ton of resources into your community, making sure that we get the education that we need for our families, make sure that we get the infrastructure in our roads in our communities, school, healthcare, so on. So much depends on this. Don't leave any money on the table. Make sure that you win back the resources that we need. And going back to specifically talking to young Latinos about the importance of getting counted on the census, we have seen citizenship questions floated in attempts to question the citizenship, also trying to diffuse the percentage of undocumented people getting counted. These are intimidation tactics, and we need to call them for what they are. They know that we are at a pivotal moment where we're growing in population size, and it's imperative to them to keep that under wraps, to keep that swept under the rug so that we don't get the representation and resources that we need. But at Jolt, our mission and our commitment is to our Latino communities to make sure that they are aware, empowered, and educated with the resources that they need to get counted. So I encourage everybody to go fill out their census, send the link to your friends and family, primos, primas, tios, tias, let them know that they need to get counted, that it's safe, that it's secure, and that their information will not be shared with immigration or Customs and Border Patrol, and that we will all benefit from an accurate count.
Let's use the full power of our social platforms. This is a great use of social media, is to to make sure that people are aware of it, because I don't think that people are often aware of the impact that the census has. Like, if we will redraw, Texas will likely gain 2 or 3 more congressional seats based on what happens in the census for us. And I think that that is a fundamentally a very big deal.
It's huge.
And that they're trying to shave 30 days off of it means that we should be up in arms.
Yeah, it should. And I mean, you know, this census count has Republicans shaking in their boots in Texas, because once we are on the roll, once there's numbers attached to our power, it's undeniable. You can't continue to ignore our issues. You have to prioritize political platforms that meet our needs. And you're absolutely right. Redistricting is going to be a massive battle. Go ahead and start getting familiar with the words redistricting now and the words gerrymandering now, if you haven't done so already, because in the next legislative cycle, that's what it's going to be all about: healthcare and redistricting. And we know that because in Texas, we lead the nation with the largest percentage of uninsured people. And during this global pandemic, we have seen that only exacerbated because so many of our families are dying due to lack of access to affordable healthcare. Healthcare will be top of mind, not only in November, but in the legislative cycle as we move forward. And then secondly, redistricting, gerrymandering. The reason that Texas has been a conservative stronghold is because of the way the maps are drawn. And we've got to make sure that we are pushing forward, and Jolt is committed to being a part of that fight, along with our partners across the state, to make sure that we get a fair map drawn so that people are represented accurately and that it's reflective of the populations in their communities.
That's right. And that to me is, I mean, you just gave me the full body chills, because that is democracy at work, and to have the cuts taken at it are the reasons that we struggle to deliver the world that we want to deliver, and the reason that healthcare is not available for those workers deemed essential, who are in Texas especially very often Latinx and suffering the most profoundly from COVID. And we have leadership in Texas that rejects Medicare. So we have to show up for our brothers and sisters and deliver the world that we want to see. And we do that in Census. Census is the best way that we can do it right now. And then the tactics that are used to suppress census are going to be the practice tactics that will be used to suppress the vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you go back into voter suppression. Voter suppression is running rampant in Texas. And, you know, I think that there's not enough conversations around it. I think that we need to start preparing for massive voter intimidation heading into the November election. We've already seen the president try to move the election date. And, you know, for folks who may not be as tuned into politics, because rightfully so, they've got a full life and work and family and so on. You know, these are tactics that are used regularly, where people try to either promote the wrong election date so that people don't cast their ballot, and so on and so forth, or try to move and manipulate the election cycles. A couple of things. The president does not have the authority to make decisions on when the election will be held. And as it stands right now, the elections will be moving forward as of November 3rd. And what we encourage at Jolt is vote early. Don't wait for election day. We know that we saw this in the primary election, massive lines to cast your ballot. You don't want to be stuck in those. So go ahead and start voting early in Texas as soon as it's available so that you can get ahead of the lines and make sure that you have your voices heard. But voter suppression often is talked about as a black and white issue, but there's so many different components to voter suppression. And here in the state, Jolt recognizes the lack of online voter registration as a form of modern voter suppression, and I'll tell you why. At Jolt, we specifically focus on mobilizing young voters, and this is a digital generation, people that consume their information vastly online. And so when you do not provide them with an opportunity to register online, Texas is one of the only states states in the country that still does not have online voter registration, you're actively disenfranchising hundreds, if not thousands, of young voters who otherwise won't cast a ballot. Because when you talk to a millennial about, well, you have to fill it out and then you have to go to the post office and you have to mail it, and like, what? No, we have to simplify the process as much as possible. Democracy is all about giving access to the people so they have their voices heard. We need to make sure that we modernize civic engagement in Texas. It's about time that we do. And Texas claims to be a leader on a lot of fronts. We must lead on this as well. And in order for us to do so, we will need to make sure that we are activating online voter registration. And we should also activate automatic voter registration, which means you turn 18 and you're eligible to vote, you're automatically registered. And that'll be a game changer within itself, making sure that people participate in democracy, not as an opt-in process, but as an automatic process. And there should be no reason as to why we can't do it. There's models across the country in other states that already have automatic voter registration. We should do the same.
I think that when you see the more barriers between a person and the ballot box, the more fear of that state's leadership or that community's leadership of the actual population. Because if they were willing to eliminate all of the barriers between us and the vote, then what we would see is the true shape of Texas. And the powers that be have worked very, very hard. I mean, just look up your congressional district and see the shape of your congressional district, and know that that congressional district was drawn with surgical precision to cut out by race many times voters, to deliver a reality that is not actually reflective of the state and the people of the state.
No, you're absolutely right. And you know, we want to make sure that we have an educated voter, and that means becoming educated on all of the different components of how elections are run in the state and in this country. And Texas has been really leading on the wrong things, which is gerrymandering our districts to look absolutely insane, and to have such diluted power for the communities in which we actually live. And so in order for us to do so, and also keep in mind that redistricting maps don't happen every election cycle. This is a huge opportunity that we have that will shape the election future, the political future of Texas for a long, long time, for many years. And so we want to make sure that we step up to meet the urgency of this moment and this time. And, you know, we're talking about the elections, and we've got to talk about voter registration and voter mobilization. And so at Jolt, this is our bread and butter. And right now, we are at the front lines trying to defend democracy in this state. Not only, we knew that going into this, we were going up against people that were better funded and more well-resourced than we were, and we knew it was an uphill battle. And now with a global pandemic, it's absolutely ludicrous that our leadership in the state has not opted for vote by mail, because we are literally telling people that they have to risk their lives if they want to participate in democracy. And that's just something that we find absolutely insane, really. And we want to make sure that people are aware that they must reject this leadership at the ballot box. Seek justice at the ballot box. November is going to be an incredibly consequential election, but we have the numbers on our side, and the momentum is on our side. Over the last several election cycles, you have seen Latino voter participation increase. You have seen youth voter participation increase like never before. And the Houston Chronicle just sent out a report noting that 16.4 million Texans are registered to vote, a record-breaking number. So we're anticipating a mass mobilization of voters come November. And it's important that people recognize the significance of this. We cannot afford to sit this one out. We want to make sure that everybody recognizes the significance, the importance, and practices social distancing, as well as bringing their face mask as they make their way to the ballot box.
And their tiny finger condoms.
Yes. Is that what they're called? I don't think that's what they're called, but we're going to go with that.
Finger cuts, but
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. But I think that that we are already getting signals from the White House that they will contest this election, that this election will not be taken for granted, that that the results will not be. And so it has never been more important that we show up with such overwhelming volume at the polls and demand the world that we want to see for our brothers and sisters in this state and in this country. And you know, this really is our moment to speak for that.
And if I can speak directly to young voters, you know,
Please.
Dr. Coretta Scott King said, every generation must fight and win back their freedom. Freedom is not something that is given. And this is literally our moment as a generation to step up and win back our freedom. We have now, millennials have outnumbered baby boomers in the block of largest eligible voting block. It is our moment to shine. We, young Latino voters in Texas, have a very different view of what politics should be like in Texas. Through our research and study at Jolt Initiative, we've identified the key voting motivators for young Latinos. Young Latinos care about healthcare. They care about immigration reform. They care about racial equity. They care about climate change. They care about the economy and gun safety. We want to make sure that you make your voice heard at the ballot box. It's imperative. And if we come out, if we turn out in record numbers, we'll do what we were intended to do, which is shock the political system and jolt Texas. We will be able to really revolutionize the way Texas is seen. And hopefully we will start getting more investments from outside of the state that will see Texas as a viable state. You know, as I travel across the country, making the case for Texas, people often tell me that Texas is a conservative state, that Texas has a Latino population that does not vote. And, you know, we talk about how Texas is not a conservative state. Texas is a state that is currently led by a minority, and that the majority of Texans haven't voted because they haven't been convinced to vote. We need to invest drastically in communities of color. We need to invest in the education and empowerment of young Latina women. We need to make sure that we're mobilizing and empowering them to recognize their full potential. At Jolt, we believe that the future of Texas is not only Latino, but it's also female. And it's a Latina who will ultimately be the decision makers and the policy makers of our state. And so with that in mind, we need to make sure that we're investing in developing a pipeline of powerful Latina women across our state to be able to position them in positions of power at every single level, whether it's COO, whether it's executive director, whether it's governor, lieutenant governor, mayor, etc. We need to make sure that we're advancing this collectively.
What I appreciate so much about the vision is that yours is truly an inclusive vision and will be the best vision for the United States. I'm actually going to take us off the Instagram because we're having major delays over there. Is that all right with you?
That's perfect. I jumped off.
All right. All right. Sorry.
No problem.
But it is an abundant and broad vision, and I think that that with it we can do anything. So some of the tactical stuff that I wanted to talk about is we have the one carrot bone that we've been thrown is that the governor has given us an extra week of early voting. So mark your calendars for October 13th. That is when early voting starts. You can wish me a happy birthday by going to the voter booth. That is like the best birthday present I could ever get, is if everybody would just go vote. I don't need anything else than that. And then the census is directly tied to redistricting, right? That's every 10-year trigger to redraw the lines happens via the census. And so it is literally a once in a decade opportunity to give voice to the people to the people that draw our maps and choose who represents what part of the state. And that happens at the state level. There's so much strong state leadership out there running for office, and we have to flip 9 seats in the Texas House to have control of the map drawing process, which is a huge deal. And we have never been closer in 30, 40 years, it seems. Yeah.
We have the momentum that we had when 40 years ago when Ann Richards won the governor's mansion. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about here. We have opportunity in our hands in Texas like we've never had before. I mean, you saw a 500% increase among young voters in 2018, a 250% increase among Latino voters in 2018. Jolt and organizations like Jolt on the ground in Texas are making a strong case that Texas is no longer the problem. Texas is the solution, and a path towards a progressive America runs through the heart of the Lone Star State. You've got to make sure that you start paying attention. We've got 38 electoral votes. 38 electoral votes, that is massive. And if you want to win the White House in the next decade, you won't be able to do it without Texas. And if we win Texas, if we transform Texas, then you will have a permanent lock on the presidency. So if you care about politics, if you care about a progressive future for this country, Texas is a battleground state for you. And you've got to invest, pay attention, and start investing in communities like ours. And it'll be young Latino communities who will deliver the state. So for anybody who's running to win right now in the state of Texas, you've got to start listening to young Latino voices, prioritizing our issues, and not just talking to us about immigration. Yes, immigration is near and dear to our heart. I, as a DACA recipient, care deeply about immigration, but we also care about healthcare. We care about climate change. We care about the economy, about so many different topics. And you need to have culturally competent staff to develop culturally competent campaigns that speak to us. You need to recognize that the Latino community is culturally, ideologically, and linguistically diverse. And you need to have plans and proposals to meet all of our needs. And it's a massive undertaking, but it's a shift that needs to occur. We need to modernize civic engagement across the state, and we need to do it with people of color front and center. You know, I see here on the list of our participants, we have our civic engagement director, Pedro, tuning in right now. And Pedro has been working so hard to make sure that we are advancing our voter registration goals, voter mobilization goals. And in this moment with the pandemic, we've had to innovate and shift to digital organizing and digital strategies like never before. And Jolt is really on the front lines, pioneering the way that we're going to reach out and mobilize young Latinos on a variety of topics by focusing on the issues, by mobilizing Latinos in low propensity communities that either haven't voted or are likely not to vote. Those are the folks that we're investing in, the people that have been overlooked, left behind, and forgotten. You know, I see here we also have Maria Tolentino, Jolt's organizing director, tuning into this call. Maria Tolentino has been crucial to our growth because she understands that in order to mobilize young voters, we need to be speaking directly to what they care about. And one of the topics that is top of mind for young Latinos is climate change. Mm-hmm. And Texas has an opportunity to be a true champion on climate change. Mm-hmm. We have the capacity to not just power using renewable sources the entire state, but we have the opportunity to power the entire country out of Texas, because that's how big our resources are. Wind and solar power in Texas can thrive. It's just up to our elected officials to invest in that, to make that transition, to let go of the grips of oil and gas, and really prioritize communities of color. You know, in Texas, we have politicians that prioritize getting checks from oil and gas while our children are growing up breathing the toxic fumes, living next to refineries. And we're the ones that are having to foot the bill for all of our health conditions due to, communities like Pasadena outside of Houston. That's right. That are majority, 60, 70% Latino, but are living around petrochemical plants and are having asthma attacks and cancer clusters because as a result of it. That has got to stop. We have an opportunity here to not only create jobs, green jobs, but prioritize communities of color and help ease the pain and health conditions that they're being plagued with.
Absolutely. And I think part of it, going back to the organizing piece and to speaking to the campaigns, is that the organizing has to be relational. It cannot just be this hope for a transaction and superficial, cheap nods to things that they think the Latinx community cares about and the young Latinx voters care about, but real relationship building within the community so that they can together shape the future.
I think that that's what makes organizations like Jolt so crucial, because
Me too.
we are year-round organizing. We don't
Yeah.
parachute in ahead of the election and try to build a relationship with the community. No, we're here for the long haul. We let the same people that we're registering to vote, we're talking to about census.
That's
the same
right.
people that we're talking about census, we're talking about climate change and climate proposals. They know that there's an organization in the community that's invested in their best interests for the long term. And that's what makes the big difference. We need to make sure that, what's really sad is that when we do go into these low propensity Latino neighborhoods, people, I was out with our census team early on in the year, and we were canvassing the East End in Houston, which is a predominantly Latino neighborhood. And there was un mi tocayo, his name was Antonio, and he was around his 50s. And he was almost brought to tears. He said he was so happy to see someone that spoke his language, because I was talking to him in Spanish, talking to him about how important it is to get counted. And he said, nobody has ever come to my door and told me that I mattered, that I needed to count, that I need to get counted in the census. And that is huge. I mean, that's transformative to people. At Jolt, our message is not, hey, are you registered? Yes or no. Our message is, hey, do you know that you're about to be the majority of the population? Are you aware into our community? You really transform the way they perceive themselves.
That's right.
And, it's about making that mental switch that I talk about often. We have grown up as Latinos being called minorities all of our life. Minorities in school, on TV, in the movies. So we believe this. We believe the word minority. But the fact of the matter is that there's nothing minor about 40% of the population. There's nothing minor about this demographic shift that is occurring right now. And we shouldn't feel that way. We need to be empowered and recognize that we deserve rights, representation, resources, and start advocating for ourselves as well.
And I think that it's important that be echoed in the white folks too, that message not only coming from the Latinx community to the Latinx community, that is for all of us true. And that needs to be our new and recognized reality.
I often think in regards to white folks, why are some sectors of the white folks so scared about being a minority? You almost think that it would be a bad thing. Why are you so scared?
What's so scary about that?
What's so scary about that, right? No, it's like the fact is that when people of color win, we all win.
Absolutely.
When women win, we all win.
Absolutely.
And it's time that we start to embrace that, and recognize that it's a strength, and that we need to adjust to into that future. And sometimes this merits uncomfortable conversations, right?
Absolutely.
But I say, if you are going to be uncomfortable for the next 30 minutes while we have this conversation, then so be it, because my community has been uncomfortable for the last 50 years.
That's
so,
right.
We're going to have some uncomfortable conversations at some point, but at the end of the day, our hope is equity, right?
That's right.
Full equity. And that's what should be crucial for all of us.
Yeah. And I think what it requires of the status quo is a move away from this scarcity mindset and power hoarding and resource hoarding to what is truly an abundance mindset, that we can and do have the resources that we need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity that matches their talent. And only when we meet that place, do we get to have the country that we would be proud to hand our children, because I would not be proud to hand our children in this mess right now. And when I say our children, I think of like globally, all of our children.
Yeah. Our country has made a huge promise, right? And we need it. What we're doing right now actively is making sure that America lives up to that promise of inclusivity, of equality, of prosperity for all, justice for all. Those are American values. And unfortunately, our country has come up short on some of those. And we want to make sure that we're holding our country accountable and living up to the expectations of the greatness of this nation.
That's right.
And you know, in this moment, you touched on this at the beginning, which is like our democracy is in jeopardy. And to even utter that is wild, because historically America has been seen as the world's greatest democracy. We have been the champions for democracy around the world, ending communism and trying to perpetuate the sense of by the people for the people. And the fact that we find ourselves in a moment where our own democracy is in jeopardy should be pause enough for people to activate themselves like never before.
Amen.
And I believe that, you know, it'll be young folks who will have to take up the mantle and move this fight forward. And it's a good fight, and it's a fight worth having. And I think we'll come out better on the other end.
I think so too. I think that we will come out having made good on a promise that has never been anything other than words on paper for most people in this country. And until we have that, we don't really have integrity. And I would love to live in a country where I can unequivocally be proud of who we are and what we've done and what we've risen to in this moment. So
yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And okay, so Antonio, tell us how I want to get the Waking Giants community excited about the work at Jolt. How can we best support you guys and the work you're doing?
Okay, so a couple of options that you have. If you have not registered to vote, Jolt will mail you your voter registration form, an envelope and a stamp to your home so that you can just fill it out and mail it back. Go to joltinitiative.org/vote and either and register right now. Literally takes 2 minutes. joltinitiative.org/vote and fill out your voter registration. Number 2, if you have not filled out your census but have questions about the census, at joltinitiative.org/census, you'll get all of the information that you need in order to prepare to fill out your census. We have a great 411, all information that you need to be a part of that. And then if you feel inclined to fuel our movement forward, to build a pipeline of Black and Brown leaders across the state, go to joltinitiative.org/donate and contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, $20, whatever you can to help us along. We're a grassroots nonprofit organization that's working on behalf of communities of color in the state, and we would love your support. So if you can, please pitch in. And if you can't, please share the word about the work that we're doing to your colleagues, your friends, your family, your network, and let them know that there's an organization in the state that is committed to this mission. So we would appreciate all that support.
And I have to say that I'm lucky enough to serve on the Jolt Initiative board. And there is I have never been part of such a well-run organization. And the money that you donate to Jolt will really sincerely be stewarded with so much care and so much intention and thought, and it will be put to its highest and best use. I cannot think of an organization that I would possibly be prouder to be in cahoots with.
Oh, Martha, well, we're so lucky to have you as our board member, and thank you so much for being a part of our board. And, you know, we can't do this alone. Texas is massive. So we need all hands on deck. We've got 3 months till voter registration deadline. I know that you said the 90 days till November 3rd, but we actually have 63 days until voter registration deadline, October 5th. October 5th. So our deadline at Jolt is October 5th because that's the last day we can register someone to vote. So it's even shorter than that. So make sure that that you're registering and getting involved and joining this fight because we need you. We also have virtual volunteer hours in the era of COVID. So if you want to join us, find out how you can get plugged in. We have volunteer hours happening weekly. Check out our social media, Jolt Action or Jolt Initiative, for dates and times. We would love for you to be a part of our Échale Ganas, which is also a community building virtual gathering where we talk about the stresses and anxieties of this moment and how to overcome them. And then we, periodically would do phone banking as well. So we would love for you to be a part of those as well.
Absolutely. And also, you have the best art.
Oh yeah, we have the best art. We really do. We have the
You
best
really
art in the game. That comes back to, people always talk about like, what's the secret sauce? Like, why has Jolt been so successful?
Yeah.
And Jolt operates under 3 pillars, which is art, digital, and culture. So we harness the power of Latino culture to create wonderful illustrations of what the future looks like in Latinos in positions of power. And we utilize digital because we're mobilizing a digital generation to advocate for these changes. So we're really proud of the work that we do. Right now, I would love to talk about Poder 15, but right now it's on hold.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it has to be. Yeah.
Because like quinceañeras, unfortunately, all had to cancel their quinceañeras. But
Poder 15 is one of my favorite initiatives once we get back online. Isn't it
incredible? So for the folks who may not know, Poder 15, Jolt Initiative is the only organization in the country that does voter registration at quinceañeras. We're so proud to be pioneering this initiative. We've just recently trademarked our Poder 15 program. It will be our first national campaign, and we'll be rolling it out in the 2021 year. So look out for that. And soon, voter registration at quinceañeras won't just be a Texas thing, it'll be an American thing. And we're looking forward to that as well.
Yay. Well, I don't know what else to say. You've given me the chills. You've made me say amen. I feel just so proud.
Questions, people.
Any questions?
You're more than welcome to open up your mic and ask questions, guys, or you can drop it into the chat box if you're here on Zoom. So please, we got tons of people listening via Zoom. Take this opportunity to please ask 2 very brilliant people any questions you may have over civics or the voter registration process or things that are going on in Texas. Please take this time, tap in this wisdom.
You know what? I have a question. So I think one of the things that is sort of an abstract concept that it helps to define is, what does voter suppression look like? And I know, and I totally agree that part of it is moving things away from digital and not blocking access where access naturally would occur. But there are some more pernicious forms of voter suppression that start to express the closer we get to the election. And I think that is a place where white people can put themselves in the way of making sure that it is safe for other people to vote.
Yeah. So there's, voter suppression, like you said, takes a lot of different shapes and forms. Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind, obviously, is voter ID laws in Texas, and the challenges that present themselves for communities of color in that regard. Another one that I can think of in regards to voter suppression is, polling locations seem to always close in predominantly Black and Brown communities, and affluent communities have easy access. I know that there was a recent article that I was reading about where African-American communities were talking about how they had either one polling location or their polling location had been shut down in their community, and they had to drive out to the nearest voting location. And the Texas Secretary of State was, and I'm sorry, it wasn't in Texas, it was in Georgia. The Georgia Secretary of State was like, well, my son went out and voted, and he voted in 20 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, because he probably voted in your neighborhood, and your neighborhood probably has 4 or 5 polling locations.
Polling locations, right. It's totally different.
And so you gotta think about that. So Black and Brown folks are normally working class people who have, their 1 to 2 jobs, and are having to commute to pick up kids, drop off kids, etc., so on and so forth. a polling location being very convenient to them is crucial to making sure that they cast their ballots. We need to make it as easy as possible, not like, oh, you need to drive 45 minutes out to your nearest voting location. That is voter suppression, right? The other thing is, you know, when we think about, for example, here in Houston, Texas Southern University had a 6-hour wait period last time during the primaries. And we're thinking like, if we are anticipating record-breaking voter turnout, we need the equipment to make sure that we are able to bring people in and bring people out as quickly and safely as possible.
Especially in a pandemic.
Especially in a pandemic, making people stand next shoulder to shoulder for 6 hours is a recipe for disaster. We need to make sure that our leadership is well equipped, and those conversations need to be happening right now. And the distribution of that equipment, the creation, allocation of that equipment needs to be happening right now. If it's not, we will have a very difficult election day in America on November 3rd. And, you know, we'll see how prepared the state is. But, you know, voter suppression is real. And we need to recognize that, like I said, America prides itself in being a democracy. Giving access to people is part of the democratic values, and accessing democracy needs to be a key component of the way that we prioritize the way we go about our civic administration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That conversation is needs to be going on with the Secretary of State, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I don't know if you all recall, but another story of voter suppression. So in February of last year, so 2018 midterms happened.
Yep.
And in 2018, we saw this huge surge of people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 months after the election, we saw a voter roll purge. Where the Texas Secretary of State, then David Whatley, attempted to remove 90,000 voters from the voting rolls. And if you looked at those, which Jolt took a very close look at that list, it was predominantly Hispanic surnames.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be a rocket science to connect the dots here. Like, whoa, Latinos are voting at record numbers. How do we get a hold of this? Let's purge 90,000 of them.
That's right.
That's exactly what happened. And so we sued, along with the ACLU and a lot of our other partners in the state. We sued the state, we sued the Texas Secretary of State, and we won. You know, the fact that he had to resend his memo, the fact that 2 weeks after we won the lawsuit, he quit, he resigned, is significant. And it talks about the progress that can be accomplished in Texas. And so what the message we're trying to send is, if you try to undermine us, overlook us, and take us for granted anymore, we won't stand for it. We just won't. And we're gonna fight back, and we're gonna defend our communities, and we're gonna demand the resources that our communities deserve.
That's right. So
be ready and expect us, because we're coming.
Thank God. Okay, well, I don't think we have any more questions. And I want to be respectful of your time. And I could not appreciate you more. I think that you are magnificent, and we're so lucky to have you in this state and in this country, leading this organization and doing the work that you do with the passion and grace and joy that you do it with.
Oh, well, Martha, it's not me. It's my whole team. We have a whole powerful team of really, really skilled leaders in our community.
I can attest to that too.
And so Jolt is operating on all cylinders thanks to all of their hard work and all of their commitment. And they make my job easy. So thank you so much for continuing to support us. And, you know, if you want to learn more about Jolt, I invite all of you to check us out at joltinitiative.org or on our social media at Jolt Action, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're happy to add you to our movement.
Great. And we will distill some of our talking points and make sure that we push people to you and make this available online. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
You guys, magical. Oh my gosh. All of the points that you hit were like boom, 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 boom. So, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. Again, thank you guys so much for coming. Register to vote. Take the census. Please, 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 as a woman of color, I am also begging you to take advantage of your rights. Use them, please. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. Be back here every Tuesday. We're having this conversation. Antonio, much love to you guys. And Jolt, have a wonderful day and take care of each other and yourselves. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.